Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self-publishing and marketing your books. I'm Ben Pick, and I'm joined by my co-hosts.
I'm Morgan Lee.
And I'm Shannon, writing under the pen name SD Huston.
And we're here today with indie author Zarina Macha, who also publishes under the pen name Diana Vale. We're going to ask her questions about her self-publishing journey and how she markets her work. But before we jump into that interview, do you all have any news or points of interest you want to talk about?
Right now, the only thing that's going on with me is I'm busy working on finishing books 2 and 3 of my trilogy so that I can release them. September, October time is my tentative release date. I'm planning on doing a fast release of the last 2 books. So that's what I got going on.
This is coming out June 1st, which is when you and I will hopefully be starting or have a plan for starting our critique process with me looking at your book 3. And you'll be looking at my first book of my next series, which should have a good little bit done. I actually hope to have the first book pretty much done in the next series, which is going to be about dragons and fae. And it's going to be a romantic fantasy series. And June 1st, we are 5 days away from the release of the final book in my trilogy, Clash of Goddesses, with Tears of the Marigold coming out on June 6th. So I'm really excited about that. Yep. And June 6th, there will be some sales going on. The Blood of the Lilies, the first book. The ebook will be free during a 5-day period, June 6th through the 10th. And Soul of a Rose and Tears of the Marigold will, for the same 5-day period, be on sale for 99 cents.
That's amazing. I don't have anything planned for the early start of the summer, but I do post weekly videos on writing as Writing to Write. So if you are interested, check those out. I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. Now let's talk about our guest author today. Residing in London, Zarina Macha is an award-winning independent author of 5 books. In 2021, her young adult novel, Anne, won the International Page Turner Book Award for Fiction. Besides writing young adult contemporary fiction and poetry, she also publishes new adult contemporary romance under her pen name Diana Vale. She's most active on YouTube, where she regularly uploads lively and informative content about her books, writing process, and day-to-day life.
Hey everybody! Thank you for having me. It's so cool to be here.
Wonderful to have you here too.
I'm a big fan of all of you. You're all like such lovely and vivacious, sparkly channels as well. Like Shannon, you know I'm a big fan of your channel. I was just saying about how I admire the book covers as well. So yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for that introduction, Ben. So as you said it, I've published 5 books under my name, Zarina Macha, and I've published about 12 plus books now under Diana Vale. And I live in London, I blog, I play guitar, I don't know what else to say. I think you introduced me so well, Ben, that I'm like out of things to say.
No worries at all. And you are incredibly busy too, just from those hobbies. Why don't you mention your YouTube channel? Where can people find you?
Yes, so I have a YouTube channel called Zarina Macha Author, which you can check out, where I post videos on writing, mainly talking about my books and my writing process. And I also do kind of vloggy type vlog videos where I vlog my life. So for example, I'll do videos on, say, if I was like going to a wedding or going to the park. It's kind of like they're all integrated. So I have videos talking about my life, as well as then cut to, okay, so I'm sitting in front of my computer and I've written 3,000 words and now I feel really tired because I'm sure they're all terrible, that kind of thing. So it's all kind of meshed together.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we can see where you are currently. What made you want to start writing?
Well, I've been writing ever since I was a kid, and it's really funny because when I tell people that I'm an author, they often say to me, oh, have you always wanted to write? Like, is that what you've always wanted to do? And honestly, yes. Like, since I was about 5, I was always writing and jotting down little notes, little stories. I used to write poetry, and then I started writing songs, and my parents were always very encouraging as well. Like, my mum got me this silver notebook, which is, it's a diary, but she got me this silver Marie from Aristocat's diary, and that's where I started to kind of write a diary and then writing stories. So yeah, no, I've literally been writing since I was little.
Okay, so what was your very first piece of work that you published, and can you tell us about how you took that first step into self-publishing?
So the first book I ever published, and for those who can see, it is called Every Last Psycho, and it is a young adult contemporary novel containing 2 novellas. So the first novella is called Every Last Thought, and the second novella is called Psycho Girl. And so I published this first in 2018 after wanting, so I did want to traditionally publish for a few years, and I did pitch several stories to agents, and I was doing this for about, I'd say from maybe 2016 till 2018. And you know what? I genuinely cannot remember how I came across self-publishing because I never thought that I would self-publish. But what happened was that I must have just stumbled upon KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, and just heard about it and thought, oh, wow, this would be such a wonderful thing. Like I can just publish my book for free. Like I literally just wanted to put my work out there. I think that's what it was. I just had all these stories, and Every Last Thought and Psycho Girl, they're 2 separate stories, but I put them together in this one book because they have very similar themes. Like they're both very dark. They're both young adult stories about teenage girls struggling with different mental health difficulties. So the first novella, Every Last Thought, is about a girl who's schizophrenic. And the second novella, Psycho Girl, is about a psychopath. So she technically has what's known as antisocial personality disorder. So that was kind of how it all started. And then I just kind of kept on going from there.
Well, you kind of answered my question about how did you make the decision to self-publish versus traditionally publish. So maybe I can ask this because you said you kind of queried. Did you query that book first?
I did. So I queried both novellas separately. And I was querying another story before that, which was kind of a children's fantasy story, which I want to return to at a later date in the future. But yes, I queried Every Last Thought and I queried Psycho Girl both separately. And this was before, like, I didn't really, I think at this point I must have been only about 19. So I was really 18 or 19. I really didn't know much about like the world of trad publishing. I was very naive. And I had like, there was a long list of agents in the UK, I think like UK literary agencies. And I was literally just going through all of them and saving all their emails, and I had like this special like query letter that I looked up online. Like this was, I wasn't on AuthorTube or anything before that. I didn't even know AuthorTube existed at that time. Like I was literally just trying it, and I had like used my personal really unprofessional email. It was really, I was surprised anyone took me seriously. But you know, I did get this one, most of the emails are very like, oh, we're sorry, we're too full at this time, you know, kind of stereotypical emails. But one of them actually, I still remember this, for Psycho Girl. She said, oh, your story caught my attention, so I looked at it straight away. And even though she obviously didn't take it on, that was like, oh my god, somebody actually sent me an email rather than just, we're sorry, but our lists are too full at the time. It was like somebody was actually interested in a story, and that was like confirmation that this is not complete rubbish. Like I really remember that. I think it must have been in 2017, but that was pretty exciting.
Okay, awesome.
As you guys probably aware from my videos, I'm very blah 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 blah. So once you start, I'll just be.
You're perfectly fine. This is all really interesting. Would you consider going down the traditional route again, going through that whole querying process?
Yes, long term, I want to be a hybrid author. So it has always been my dream to be traditionally published. And I really never thought I would self-publish. And initially, self-publishing was really just about putting my work out there. And like for those who are able to see, I have 5 books under my real name now. And these are all self-published. And I think what happened was I put out Every Last Psycho, and I was so surprised at how easy self-publishing was that I end up putting out another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. And it was like, before I knew it, this was becoming a whole business. And as you guys know, I also write as Diana Vale. But no, long term, I definitely want to. So this probably won't be until late 2023. I do have a story that I do specifically want to work on to pitch to agents. And it's I would say it's YA, kind of lower YA fantasy. And that is something I definitely want to pitch to agents. But that won't be till late 2023 at the earliest.
Did you have any misconceptions when you started self-publishing about the self-publishing process?
I really didn't know what I was doing. So initially, my first version of Every Last Psycho, so as you can see, the size of this is known as called B formatting size. I don't need to say the exact dimensions, but my very first version was much bigger. It was maybe like, I still have copies of it. I think it was like 6 times 9 inches, whereas this one is like 5 point something times 7 point something inches. So much, you know, more compact. So the size thing and the kind of technicalities was a thing. And also ISBN ISBNs as well, like all the real technical things, you know, with ISBNs, book sizing, formatting, and also like uploading the ebook. I mean, I've updated my ebooks so many times because initially I did them all with Kindle Create. Shanna's nodding because she's like, yeah, I've been there. Like, you know, like I did them all initially with Kindle Create, and because they were all initially in Kindle Unlimited, and then I made them live, so I did them via Draft to Digital, and eventually I my brother has a Apple Mac which he got about sometime beginning of 2021, so I again changed them all and uploaded them via Vellum, and I actually use Vellum to upload my Diana Vale ebooks. So yeah, the technicalities, and also I kind of just think of self-publishing initially as a business. I think I just thought, oh, I'm just publishing my books and putting them out there, and I'll just like tweet at them a little bit and do this kind of thing, and I didn't think so much about the business side of it initially. It was more just I just want to put my work out there, but I didn't really start to think of it as a business until say 2019, and even more so in 2021 when I started really doing my Diana Vale books. Like that's when I started to really see it as this is a business.
Yeah, and that probably goes along with, you know, you were just young when you published your first book, so you know, you kind of grew into like, oh wait, I can actually make money with this. You know, you were
Yeah, I mean, I'm still pretty young, but no, you're absolutely right.
Sorry, I did not mean that to be because I'm in my 40s. Okay,
No.
so you were
No,
young.
well, you're right. I am pretty young. I mean, I published Every Last Icon when I was 21, and I was querying when I was like my late teens. I think I feel like it was before. I'm sure I started querying in 2016. So I would have been, it would have been 18.
Yeah, I mean, but that's pretty young compared to a lot of self-published authors who don't start until a bit later. So, I mean, you just really went right into it as a young teen, you know, a young teenager or older teenager. But yeah, you kind of had a path already. You knew what you wanted to do, even if you didn't realize everything you could do with it yet. So I'm really amazed by that.
I do think that I am quite glad that I started young, because I feel like hopefully by the time I'm in my late 20s and 30s, but preferably like soon within the next few years, I really want to like be well established in this. So I am quite glad that I started doing this young, so I could kind of get the ball rolling. You know what I mean?
I get that. I wish I would have done it. I knew I wanted to do it when I was younger, but I let other things take precedence. So
yeah, it can be hard sometimes, I guess. Like I think the world doesn't always appreciate artists. So if you want to be an artist, sometimes you kind of get, I don't know, swayed by other things. But if you have like a thick skin, then you can kind of do it. I mean, I am also lucky because again, my parents were really supportive, and my dad is also a columnist and a musician. So he kind of had that already, that kind of creative spark in the family.
you started your indie career publishing under your name Zarina Macha, where you published the 3 young adult novels, the contemporary novels, and 2 poetry books between 2018 and 2020. But in 2021, as you mentioned, you switched to writing under your pen name, Diana Vale, and you published new adult contemporary romance. Could you tell us about your thinking and your process in changing your focus for your career?
Yeah, so I heard about the idea of rapid releasing. And so rapid release is basically, for those who are unaware, rapid release is when an author publishes books very, very quickly, and usually quite a lot of them in like a small space. So it could be like one book every 2 weeks, one book every month, one book every 3 months. And they're usually in a genre which is quite popular. So romance and fantasy and science fiction tend to be the most popular. And usually these authors do series. So around late 2020, so I've been working on my novel, my current work in progress called Tic Tac Toe, which I'll talk about later. But I kind of put that aside because I wanted to really start to think, yo, like I'm a good writer. I want to actually like make money writing and not make money writing doing like editing and content. I want to actually make money writing fiction, which I love. So it's like, how can I combine the two? And there are so many indie romance authors out there, like it's insane. And there are like, it's mostly women, and these women do make really good income. Like it can take a good few years, but once it happens, they can be making like 6-figure incomes, even 7-figure incomes per year. So I was like, that's a really something I could try. But I didn't actually initially start with romance. I started initially with fantasy because I'm not really a super romantic person. Like, I don't really read romance. I usually read contemporary or Stephen King, who's a horror writer. So I wasn't like that well versed in the romance genre. So I thought, okay, I'll do fantasy. So initially I had this idea of doing a young adult kind of teen fantasy series, and there were going to be like episodic fiction. And I found out you can actually do that on Kindle Vella, but that's currently not available in the UK. It's only in America, which is really annoying. Hopefully it will become international. But so I was doing this teen fantasy series kind of like because I used to watch a lot of these teen shows when I was younger, and they were about like girls in school or things like Zoe 101 and the Sleepover Club and stuff. And I used to like really love these shows. So I thought writing stories like this, but it's a fantasy. So I had this idea of this girl who's like a mage called Lola, and she goes to this magic school, and there's all these like adventures. Like, I really kind of got into it, but I sent it to a beta reader on Fiverr, and she gave me some advice on it, and she was very, very like thorough and in-depth in her comments. And I do kind of think that while I did like it, it wasn't quite right. I think I was trying to force it a little bit. So I decided to kind of shift it and tried something a bit darker, and my boyfriend at the time was really, really helpful. Like, he was really supportive and was helping me with a sort of darker angle. So it was still in the fantasy genre, but instead of like mages going to magic school, it was a bit, rather than like young adult, this is probably more new adult, and you have these like mages and vampires and I think necromancers. It was really dark, and it was really like really a lot of fun. And I remember drafting out something like 11,000 words in one day. Like, we must have planned out a whole thing, and I drafted it, and I sent it to the same beta reader for feedback, and she said it was much better. And I think I did the second one as well, but I don't know, like somewhere through it, I just found it to be a bit like I was forcing it, because as much as I found the story really interesting and I was enjoying it, at the end of the day, my current thing right now is contemporary. And that's why this children's fantasy book, which I've wanted to pitch to ages for like a long, long time, why it's not done yet, because I currently find contemporary much easier to write. So I just kind of just did a complete 180 and decided to try contemporary romance instead. And it kind of happened a bit randomly. So it was around January of 2021. So there was this book called Love Lessons by Jacqueline Wilson, which was one of my favorite books as a teenager. And it's all about this girl who falls in love with her art teacher. And it is obviously a bit scandalous, like she's like 14 and the teacher's like in his 20s, but it's very clean. Like, it's, you know, it's for kind of, well, it does say on the back for teenage readers actually, but I think I read this when I was about 10. So for some random reason, I decided to reread this. I think the universe was like sending me a sign, because I reread it. And then I had this idea about writing a story about a girl who falls for her professor, although the girl would be 18, not 14. And that's when I had the idea of writing Professor Valentine, which is the first romance novella that I wrote and published in February 2021. And I realized, like, hey, this is actually a lot of fun. Like, I can do this. I can do contemporary romance, because I already write contemporary fiction, and it's just switching it into the romance genre. And I also bought this book before that called Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes, which talks all about how to plot romance stories. Oh my god, yes, there you go, she's got it, you know. Yeah, it's a really, really useful book, and it's very straightforward, very easy. I recommend that, and I also really recommend Rapid Release by Jewel Allen. That is a wonderful book, and it's especially targeted, I think, of romance authors. So yeah, those are two books that I really do recommend for rapid release and romance writing.
You did kind of answer my question, so I'm going to sort of shift the focus a little bit. And you mentioned that you published 12 different books and 3 box sets in 2021 as Diana Vale. So rather than rehash why you went through the model of rapid releasing, I'm going to shift it to ask, did you know in February when you published that first book that you wanted to get out, you know, more than one a month for the rest of the year? Or how did that sort of evolve?
Yeah, so yes, Professor Valentine was the first one. And so I actually planned out. So I found out with rapid releasing that the best way to really make money from it long term is to write in series. And with romance, it's not really, because obviously if you're writing a fantasy or a science fiction series, the books can all follow on. But with romance, you've written a story, the couple get together at the end. You might do a sequel following them up, but the way I was approaching this series was it was all set in the same universe. So it's called the Kirk University series. And so I planned out, I think I must have planned, I'm not sure how many I planned out initially. I think it was about 12, but I planned out a whole bunch of books in this series, and they were all about different couples. So I had the professor and the student, and then I had another couple where you have, so they meet on a one night stand and they're two law students. And then I had one with a lesbian couple. And this is something I did about several months later when I realized that if you're writing lesbian and gay couples, it's better to have them in separate series, as some readers specifically like to only read LGBT fiction. And this isn't something which I realized. So while all of the books I've published as Diana Vale are part of the Kirk universe, there's the Kirk University series, which is specifically heterosexual couples, the Kirk Gal series, which is lesbian couples, and the Kirk Guy series, which is gay couples. So that was quite helpful. And that was something which I didn't initially think of, because initially, as you said, Ben, like I did kind of plan out kind of a bunch of different stories and different character ideas. And then as time went on, as I saw that the romance books have been gaining more traction, I realized that actually writing those, I mean, so far I've only got 3, but I've got maybe 2. I've got 3 more that I want to do this year, and they are like the most popular, like romance readers. There is a very good market for romance. So if you can write that, and if you enjoy doing that, then it's really good. And it's really interesting. Like, it's mainly, there's obviously a lot of gay men, but it's a lot of gay men who read romance, but there's also a lot of women who read romance, and also a lot of women who write romance. Like, I know one author called Lucy Lennox, and I think she pretty much just writes romance. Like, it is a big market. So that was something I didn't really think of initially, and that's kind of where I wanted to focus on a bit more this year.
So I don't know if this is an obvious answer or not, but if you could do 2021 all over again, would you still rapid release so many books?
Yes. It was really, really exhausting, but I'm one of those people where I don't really believe in, oh, I should have done this or that. I very much believe that everything happens for a reason, and I do believe that the universe makes us do what we're supposed to do when we're supposed to do it. So I think that I was supposed to rapid release all those books. I mean, I did make quite a few mistakes, like initially the first 5 months. So initially I had different book covers, and if you can see, the covers initially were more like colorful and a bit more dreamy like, and they had the 2 couples, and the books were not really selling very well at first. And I went on this group called 20 Books to 50K and was like, hey, like, I need some advice. Like, I think at this point I had about 5 out, and I was like, why am I making like £10 a month? This is so embarrassing. I thought this was going to be really good. So I got some advice, and one of the biggest advices I got was obviously the thing about not having LGBT couples and straight couples in the same series, but also changing the covers. So that's where I had these like very simple covers with just one person on the front, and I really like them. You know, they're very classy and very like, you know, very nice, very white. But you know what, like, if I hadn't had made the mistake of doing the wrong covers initially, I wouldn't have known how to do that. You know what I mean? So I think you do have to kind of make a mistake in order to know what the right thing is to do afterwards, if that makes sense.
And that's one thing, when I look at all of your books, there is a clear brand across all the covers with the way that you have them now. So I think that really helps your sell-through, your read-through rate, probably because it's very clear which books belong to you.
Yes, absolutely. And branding is so important. And especially like with Diana Vale, like, I mean, this is also a very subtle thing. If you're able to see, the lesbian one it's in pink, whereas the others are blue. And even on the front covers, on the spine, yes, on the spine, and even on the front covers, so the Kirk Guy's books have the title in blue, and the other ones have the title in silver. So that's also like a very subtle difference. And also, like, the Kirk Guy's books all have these very like kind of more smutty covers, because they're slightly, I mean, the books are all steamy, but the Kirk Guy's ones are more even steamy. They're a bit more steamy, which is probably also why they sell more, because they're all like half naked men on the cover. Yay. And that's also another subtle way to distinguish them, because otherwise, if they all look too similar, then it's harder to distinguish them. But at least with this, you can distinguish like this from this. You know what I mean? Like, this is, yeah.
I did notice that the ones that were male, they all had a naked half of a man on them. So
Yeah.
I picked that up right away. That was very good branding there. So
Yes, distinguished, yeah. And also, yeah, because they have like, I think some have like up to 4 or 5 sex scenes, whereas these straight ones usually just have like 2 sex scenes. So that was kind of, yeah, just also a visual difference.
well, you also include so much diversity in your work, spanning topics such as race, gender, sexuality, mental disorders. What draws you to write about such rich and diverse characters, and how do you think that has affected your publishing life, whether positive, negative, or both?
Well, I love that question, and it is really important to me because I live in London, which is the most multicultural, diverse city in the world. Like, and I come from a very diverse family. My mum is Indian, well, she's British, but of Indian descent. My dad is Tanzanian, and I have family members who are German, who are also mixed race. Like, I'm used to being in a very diverse environment. In fact, it was only when I went to university, because I briefly went to University of York, which is actually where I based Kirk University on. And York is up north and it's much more ethnically homogenous. Like, there's a lot more white English people there, which for me was a bit like strange because I wasn't used to seeing so many white English people. I was used to seeing more like white Jewish people or white Eastern European people, but not so many like white natively English people. So I wanted to incorporate that in my series and to have characters who are racially diverse, because also a lot of romance books, and I noticed this as well, are typically very American and very like Anglo white American. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not like necessarily a good or bad thing. It is what it is. Like, but if you do have a lot of like white American, maybe women from small towns writing these kind of books, and they're going to be representing that, which is fine. But for me, as a kind of young mixed race girl living in the UK, I wanted to represent that in my books. And mental illness as well is so important to me because of personal struggles as well. So that is something which I really do incorporate in all my books. I mean, my books under my name, they all deal with mental health, mental illness struggles. And I think it's a very common thing as well among my generation. Like, people are getting more and more aware about mental illness and mental health struggles and self-care. And because also from a personal standpoint, like, I struggle with panic attacks and panic disorder. I've struggled with that since 2016. And that's really had a massively crippling effect on my life, on what I'm able to do, on how often I'm able to go outside, which is annoying because I'm an extrovert and I like talking to people. So it's really annoying to have that side of me which wants to socialize, and then the super anxiety part of me which is like, oh my god, stay inside, don't move. So that's really irritating. But no, I really wanted to capture that in my books. And I do have, like, even though my Diana Vale books are romance books and they are obviously very like feel good, lighthearted books, some of them do delve into like these kind of topics. I mean, I know, like, for example, Marco Polo, like, one of the characters is a recovering alcoholic, which I also went through. And in this book, Not You, one of the characters is, so I think, yeah, Not You is book 5 of the Kirk University series, and the girl Becca has OCD, and that was something that I wanted to write about. And so on, like, there's characters with ADHD, characters with anxiety, like, there's all kinds of these kind of things. So I really think, and it also, for me, it kind of humanizes the characters as well. Like, it makes them a bit, I don't know, like, it's not even that it makes them easier to relate to. I think it just brings out that side of humanity which is in all of us. I mean, I know, Ben, like, you've made videos on taking care of mental health, which I think is so important and so necessary, especially for writers, because we literally are in our head all the time and can just get so sucked into ourselves that we forget, like, that we need to be out there in the world, talk to people and not be so stuck in ourselves. Because especially if we're prone to things like depression, anxiety, and dark thoughts, that we need to not feed that.
Yeah, I'm the complete opposite. I'm more introverted and definitely do try to limit the time outside. But anyways, what has been your favorite part of the indie writing to publishing journey?
Writing. That's the part I enjoy the most. I enjoy writing the stories. I enjoy coming up with the stories. The marketing businessy stuff is always a bit of a drag. I mean, I think artists, we're fundamentally creative and we want to just do the creative stuff, and sometimes you don't want to do all of the other stuff. And I've had to do much more than I've ever done, I'd say, in the past year or two. Definitely the past year since starting with Diana Vale. Like, I mean, I started experimenting with things like Amazon ads in 2020 with my other books, and yeah, I for me, writing the stories, because fundamentally that's what I am. I'm a writer. I am fundamentally a storyteller. That's what I love to do. It's what I've always loved to do. It's what I'll do till the day I die. Like, so that's always my favorite part, just being able, it's like whatever other horrible, terrible things, at least I can just come on my computer and write a freaking story. Like, that is, I'm just so blessed that I'm able to do that. Otherwise, I would go mad.
I definitely relate to that. You kind of already mentioned it, but on the flip side, what is the least favorite part of this whole writing to publishing journey? Would it be the marketing?
Marketing is hard, isn't it? I mean, I think there are some things, and I know obviously those like be coming up a bit later, but there are some things like having newsletters, which I do quite enjoy. But things like making Amazon ads, or I don't know, anything that is really technical, like having to set the right book specifications. I mean, Shannon, you've done so many videos on this, which I really admire, because as I was saying, like when I first started self-publishing, I almost wish that I'd have started AuthorTube sooner, because I would have been around people who are in the same boat as me, but I just didn't know what I was doing. Like, I didn't know that if you want to upload a book to Ingram Spark, for example, you need to have different ISBNs. I mean, I do use for the ISBNs for my Diana Vale books, I do use the free ones because they are all exclusively on Amazon, and I'm not planning on selling them myself. But for my Zarina Macha books, I definitely have my own ISBNs because they're wide, and if your books are wide, then it makes sense for them all to have the same bloody number. Otherwise, it's just going to be like really confusing, because if you're, for example, if you're using the free Amazon ISBNs for the ebook and then the free draft digital ISBNs for the ebook, you're having two different numbers. And this stuff is so abstract. It's like, it's so nice to talk about this with people and they know what I'm talking about. Because if I try and talk about this with my friends or family, like I remember like saying, oh yeah, I got to like update all of my ISBNs, and they're just like, what are you? It's like a different language. So it's nice to kind of be able to talk about that with people who understand. I love how you're all nodding.
I totally get that, the ISBNs. It's funny because Heidi Thorne, who is coming out on the show, she just did a video about ISBNs and about whether or not you should use one Amazon gives you, or buy your own or whatever. And it's a very personal choice because ISBNs, at least in the US, they're very expensive. I don't know what they are, the costs in the UK. Canada, it's free. And so I look at the long vision. Like, I know my books are going to be wide. I actually want to be selling them myself directly eventually. So I just thought, I don't want 2-3 different ISBNs associated with my books. I want one. And so that's why I had made that decision to buy ISBNs. But yeah, I get it. That's a whole other topic that you can't talk to your family about because they're like, why does it matter?
I mean, in the UK, they sell them via the Nielsen ISBN store. So I know that they get cheaper when you buy them in bulk. So one single one is £84, and I think 10 is 180 something pounds. So that is like a massive price difference, So I actually do plan on getting another pack soon, because when I publish my next book, I'll need ISBNs for that. So yeah,
I bought a pack of 10 for $250. So
$250 US. I guess it's about the same. I guess
it's about the same. Yeah, but then you can buy 100 for like just over 500. I think is what it is. And I was like, well, do I need 100?
Oh my God.
Yeah, but then now I'm thinking about all the books I know I want to write, and if you have to have a different ISBN for every format. So one for your ebook.
I know, one for the paperback, one for a hardback. Yes, literally. I mean, it's long term. It's a very good it's a very good investment. I mean, it's weird because like 100 for $500, that is actually really, really cheap. Like, it's not cheap, but for when you compare it,
Don't quote me because I don't know if I remember the exact price, but I know it was not 1,000. I know it wasn't that. Yeah. So I'd have to look at it, but I think I was remembering it was just over 500, so just over north of that number. So, but yeah, I was like, but do I really need 100? At the time that I bought my first 10, I was like, well, let me just go with this and see what happens. But now I wish I would have bought the 100 because I'm thinking about all the things I know I want to write.
Yeah,
so,
I know exactly what you mean. Long term, it's a long term. Yeah, maybe in like a year or two.
Yeah. Well, if you could only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published writers, what's your best publishing tip or trick?
I mean, in terms of writing itself, I really think the classic advice of read lots and write lots, but that's not very helpful. Actually, you know what? I would say the most important thing is to persevere. Just persevere. Look at it as a long-term thing as well. Don't look at it as a short-term thing, because when I started doing my Diana Vale books, I thought within 6 months I'd be making like $1,000 from my books, and I've been doing this for over a year, and now I'm making like over $100, over $100, well, just under £100 per month, which isn't much, but I think if I keep on going at the rate that I'm going, hopefully within like a year or two, that will hit like 4 figures per month. So I look at it as a long-term process, because if you just focus it on the short term, you are just going to get really miserable. But if you see it as like, this is a long-term thing, by long-term, I'm talking like 2-3 years, I mean, most businesses as well, because if you look at this as a business, most businesses take typically 2 to 3 years to really get going before they become profitable, and 5 years before they become really, really really profitable. So it's definitely a process and something where you have to keep it as, I'm seeing this as a long-term process. Almost like if you're doing a university degree takes 3 years in the UK. So start it and you're like, oh my God, oh, this is so difficult. But if you see it as, okay, it's 3 years, by the end of those 3 years, I'm going to be, and a lot of people like forget that. Like that's the whole thing of remembering to see it as a journey almost.
That's absolutely true, and I completely agree. I want to shift over to a topic that you might not necessarily want to talk about, but what marketing do you do for your books?
Well, my favorite kind of marketing, well, actually, my two favorite types of marketing is YouTube and newsletters. Because I guess when I think of the word marketing, I don't know why, but marketing just has a really icky connotation to me. It just makes me think of like facts and data spreadsheets and techie stuff. And I'm really not that at all. But it doesn't have to be that. Like marketing, so newsletters are something I really love. So I started doing newsletters in 2019 because I had a friend who was actually kind of working with me on some things. Like she was helping me a lot. She actually designed my website for me. She was really, really amazing and really helpful. And she advised me to start a newsletter. So I did, because you can use newsletter builders to gain subscribers quite quickly. And how you do that is you join a website like there's Authors XP, there's Book Sweeps, there's Story Origin, Book Funnel. You can join them and then participate in like these mass promos where then you sign up to them. And then what happens is everybody wins like one copy of each author's ebook. Not everybody, but like the 3 winners or whatever win like a copy of every author's ebook, and then you gain like a few hundred subscribers. So I've basically been doing that, and because I do regularly call my email list, because if I didn't, I'd have like 4,000 subscribers on both my email lists, but I have just over 1,000 on both of them. But that's because I regularly call subscribers who aren't opening my emails. But so those are really good, because I know like from my Diana Vale book specifically, I do actually sell books with my newsletters. Like if I have a new book and I have like, I can see like the sales going up, or I've gotten like ARC reviews from people on my newsletters. I really, really recommend newsletters. I think newsletters are really the best thing, because the thing about things like Instagram and Twitter is that they're so saturated with content, and people aren't going on them to engage in content. They're going on them to just scroll. And I think if you have a big following on these, then they're good, but it takes so long to get a big following. Like if you have 20,000 people on Twitter, then yes, it's good. But if you don't, then you're kind of just, I don't know. I think that if you're prepared to invest the time to build a following on social media, it's okay, but I'm not. I'd rather focus it on my writing, the actual books, on doing newsletters, and on doing YouTube. So newsletters, I really do recommend them. And also a newsletter is personal. Like for my Zarina Macha newsletter, I started this format last year called Zarina Zine, because initially I've done a big evolution of my newsletters. I'm probably going to do a future YouTube video talking about this, but Zarina Zine, it's almost like my own personal e-zine. So every 2 weeks it goes out and I talk about my life, I talk about book stuff, I talk about things, anything writing related. I usually do an opinion piece, which sometimes might be controversial because I'm very opinionated, and I include YouTube videos sometimes. So I really do love that, and like I genuinely enjoy writing my newsletters. They're so much fun because it's like a part of me, and I like doing my Diana Vale newsletters as well. So yeah, and then obviously YouTube. Like YouTube is really a fantastic source of marketing. It's actually partly why I started the channel, to market my books and to connect with other authors like you guys, so people know about my work. And I think it's really amazing, and AuthorTube is such a great marketing tool because you can connect with like-minded authors, you can connect with booktubers, and yeah, that's really, so I think yeah, YouTube and newsletters are my 2 favorite types of marketing.
Awesome. I love your zine. That sounds like a really cool idea. So I really love that. So do you use different strategies when it comes to your newsletters for your for your Zarina Macha books versus your Diana Vale books? And how does that go?
Yes, so for Diana Vale, I have different email, different accounts, everything is different. And it's actually, I really want to point this out, because some people have asked me actually, so how come you publish romance under a pen name? Like, why don't you just do it all under the same name? And it's not because I don't want people to know that I'm writing romance. That's got nothing to do with it. It's nothing to do with wanting to be secretive or private. It's got everything to do with marketing and everything to do with branding, because Diana Vale is a very specific brand, and romance is a very targeted genre. Like romance readers are specific readers, and there are some people, like there are some romance readers who only read romance, and as I touched on earlier, there are some romance readers who only read romance, who only read contemporary, who only read vampire, billionaires, military military romance. Like romance readers are a very specific type of reader, and I don't know this because I'm not actually a romance reader. I have read romance, like I've been reading, but even like my romance choices, and I noticed this thinking about it, like all the romance books I've read in the past year have been contemporary. So even that, like contemporary, you know, I wouldn't really do like vampire romance because I mean I might do in the future, but you know, it's different types. So that's really important. And for my Zarina Macha newsletters, like even the style of it, I mean, like my Diana Vale newsletters, I have like I have a special logo which my cover designer designed because she also does logos. She's a designer I use on Fiverr. She's amazing, very, very affordable. Fiverr is, God, I love Fiverr so much. Yeah, so she does she did a logo for me, and like the format for my newsletters, my Diana Vale. So my Diana Vale newsletters are much more like book focused. They're more like, oh, here are my books, here are some other books on story origin. Whereas my Zarina zine are more personal. They're more like me talking about myself as well as writing. They're more like about me focused, I guess. Whereas the Diana Vale newsletters are more book focused. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could even show like the differences, like 2 examples to show how they differ. I use MailerLite as well. I've experimented. I did use MailChimp initially, but I personally, I absolutely love MailerLite. I had a dabble in Flowdesk, but for me, MailerLite is my favorite, and I'm very happy with MailerLite.
I can definitely understand using a different pen name for your romance, and it's something I'm struggling with at the moment because I know I'm venturing into romantic fantasy next. And I'm like, romance can be a whole different beast. It is a whole different subset of authors. And I'm like, should I have a different pen name just for the romance? I'm like, do I really want to try and keep up 2 pen names? Because that's twice the work. That's twice the marketing if you're trying to keep up with both of those. That's still something I'm struggling with, but I think I'm just going to keep it all. It is fantasy related, which my first series is fantasy. So I think I'm just going to keep it all under the same name and keep it easy for myself.
Yeah, can I make a comment on that as well? I think because it's all fantasy, it's fine. Because the difference with me is because it's kind of young adult, contemporary, and poetry versus romance, like because they're 2 almost different, they're so different, but it's like you doing fantasy but still doing romantic fantasy is still kind of the umbrella. It's almost like if somebody was doing sci-fi and then doing horror and then doing dystopia, I don't think they need a separate pen name because that's all still very similar. It's almost like all under the umbrella of spec fiction. Whereas if someone was writing historical fiction and self-help books, then I do think having separate pen names is a good idea for that. You know what I mean? But no, I don't think you need personally, I don't think you need another pen name for fantasy romance.
And I do tend to I'm going to treat my, I don't have steamy scenes. I don't have sex scenes that are on the page, and I don't have that in my fantasy book, and I'm not going to have it in my romantic fantasy either. So
that's a good thing to point as well, actually. Yes, because also with romance as well, this is something that I also should mention. So all of my romance books are steamy romance, and as I mentioned, my romance is slightly steamier, but they're still all like have sex on the page. And if, for example, so if you were writing, say, steamy romance versus clean romance, that's another thing as well. Like there are clean romance readers don't like to read sex on the page, whereas steamy readers don't really mind either way. But if somebody, for example, was writing, say, Christian romance and erotic romance, they would have to do those under 2 pen names because they are completely different. Like even though they are both romance, they're very, very different readers, different audiences. And a reader of clean is not going to read steamy, and a reader of steamy would prefer steamy.
Yeah. We wanted to also ask you about your marketing your poetry, because we've heard in the past, right, from other authors that marketing poetry is extremely difficult. I don't know if you still do the same tactics where you just do the newsletter and your YouTube. Although I don't. Have you talked about poetry on your YouTube channel? Because I'm not sure if I remember you talking about your poetry. But if you do market your poetry books, what do you think are the best practices for marketing poetry? Or if you don't, do you have any plans for marketing them?
I love this question because I had a very specific period where I was going, so this was between 2019 and 2020, early 2020. So I was going to a lot of poetry events, and I would actually, so poetry open mics in London. There was one I'd go to pretty much every week, and there were some others that would happen like maybe once a month. And I would go and do a reading, and then I would sell sometimes like 4 or 5 books. And it's really sad because the pandemic completely ruined that because that was becoming a thing. Like that was obviously, again, I wasn't making, a ton, but I was still going and I was still selling books, and it was really good for my poetry. Like I probably sold more copies of my poetry books than I have of any of my other books, my physical books, just because of going to poetry events. And I would have loved to keep up with that. I even ended up getting a card reader thing, so I ended up making more sales with that because people prefer to pay with card rather than cash, which I totally relate to. I'm paying cash. So yeah, that specifically, I would mainly do poetry marketing by going to poetry events, and it's really sad the pandemic ruined that for me, and I hope that someday I'll be able to go back to doing that again because I really enjoyed that. But no, I don't talk about poetry as much on my main channel, I think because I don't know why. I'm trying to think why. I think I just haven't done a video on it yet because poetry also, I like to be very like live. I have done some like poetry live streams. Like there is a charity that I work with that my family like knows very well called Global Fusion Music and Arts, and I've done spoken word and poetry events for them online, which are really lovely. And I also have a friend named Jacqueline who hosts a poetry event once a month, and she's a fellow poet. I actually interviewed her on my channel a while ago, so that was really nice. So yeah, but also I think because it's true, like poetry in itself is, I almost see like my main thing is fiction, and poetry is almost like a subsidiary of that, because I think poetry, like, I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say this, but I think you would have to publish a lot of poetry books to make a living as a poet. You know what I mean? You'd have to do like sell a lot. You'd have to be doing like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't see poetry for me as not like my main thing. It's more like an extra thing. I write stories and then I also love to write poetry. But my main thing really is fiction. That's like my main focus and my main kind of, yeah.
What marketing have you tried that you would never want to do again?
So I briefly mentioned in passing the website Fiverr, which I love. And when I first started publishing Every Last Psycho, because again, I don't really know much about building a newsletter or doing Amazon ads. So I went on Fiverr and I think I must have purchased like 5 or 6 different book promo things, and they were all failed. They all had no impact. It was a complete waste of money. It was only about collectively £50, but still, I wouldn't recommend that. So that is one thing. I would not recommend using Fiverr for marketing. I would recommend using websites like Authors XP, Story Origin, Book Sweeps, Book Funnel. These are all like Authors XP is a fantastic website. I really could not remember how I found it. It must have been via an author Facebook group, but they have so many marketing tools that you can use. And Amy is really amazing. She's very attentive. So I really recommend using, Authors XP, Story Origin. These are great sites, but don't go on Fiverr to market this. Fiverr is great for cover designers, by the way. It's great for cover designers. It's great for like editors as well, if you want affordable editing. But marketing, I personally haven't had good experiences with that.
Do you find social media is essential for self-published authors? Why or why not?
Personally, no. And I think people who aren't authors, who are very like business minded, tend to see social media as something which you should use a lot. But personally, because I'm thinking like readers are not really, well, I kind of mentioned this earlier. Social media is very saturated with information. So unless you have a big following, it's hard to gain attraction on social media. Like if you have a major following, if you have thousands of followers on Instagram and Twitter, I mean, you can do that. You can build up. Like I actually have TikTok account I have 2 TikTok accounts, one for Zarina Macha and one for Diana Vale, and I was posting TikToks a while back for Diana Vale. I was getting like hundreds of views, but I just completely forgot that I had it. I'm not really very good with social media personally because I get very, very, very overwhelmed, and it's also tied to my anxiety, tied to having all of these notifications. So I really thought I just want to keep it simple and just put all my energy onto YouTube and my newsletter and focus on just putting out the books. That's what I really wanted to focus on, as in like building up the books, building them up, and then kind of spend time on, and also of course doing Amazon ads as well. I do recommend Amazon ads are good, but even those, I think it's better to have like a backlog first. I don't know, like I think personally it's better to have a backlog than to market, rather than to try and market when you've only got like a couple books out there. Like when you have like a lot of books out, especially a lot of books in like one series, then I think it's easier to market, which I know might sound a bit like counter to what the mainstream might say, but I kind of think that makes more sense because especially if you're an indie author, if you have like 10 books out in one series, like for example, by the end of the year, I'm hoping to have about 6 books out in my Kirk Guys series, and I'll have my 10 books out in my Kirk University main series. And then I think it's like kind of easier in a way because then you know, if somebody likes the first book, they'll go and read the others. And I found that with like my Kirk University, like because my Professor Valentine book is perma-free, and so if somebody downloads that and they go and read the others, they might go and read box sets, and you can see the page reads going up. So I find that to be quite helpful.
I think I totally agree with you on that. For those of you who may follow my YouTube channel, right, I've documented my marketing and what I've done with my books with each book launch I've had. And my second book launch, I had way more sales, way more downloads than I did my first one. And I'm anticipating the third one being even more. And with all that in mind, I've spent so much money on all of these that I thought it would have been better if I had launched all the books in the series and didn't spend any money on marketing until the last book launch, because now I have the entire series that they can go through to do that all that marketing would pay for instead of doing it for each book.
It's true, you know, and I kind of agree. Like that's actually why I've paused. So I'm not actually haven't done any Amazon ads, I think, since end of last year. I've decided to just pause them until I finish like the rest of the books in my Kirk series, because I got 3 more in my Kirk main series, and I want to release 3 more in my Kirk Guys series, 2 to 3. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's for this year. So I don't really want to waste money on more. I mean, I'm not saying the thing is nothing, you know, trial and error in it, like nothing gain, nothing, whatever the phrase is, you know, there's nothing is a waste. And I want to stress that. And the reason I say that is because you have to learn, you have to make mistakes in order to learn what you're doing. And it's true, like none of us really know what we're doing. We just kind of learn it as we go along. But I definitely do think it's good to get work out there and then like market rather than market when you don't really have anything out there. Or paid marketing. I mean, of course you can have like a social media presence if you want, but no, I don't know. I don't really personally. I also didn't find social media very helpful in general. Like when I would go on Instagram and post about my books, like people like it, and then it's like, well, so what? You know, people just like. I don't find it very really.
But I would say that your YouTube channel falls under social media, which I think works really great for you.
Yes, it's true. And I think YouTube is the one social media which I really do support. And I think even because I don't use so I deleted Instagram and Twitter last year because they weren't really good for my mental health. And Facebook, I don't really use. I do have a Facebook group, a private group called Zari's Corner, which is lovely. And I have people there who are very supportive of me and my work. And obviously I have my newsletter. But yeah, YouTube is the only, so Facebook group, newsletter, and YouTube are the 3 main things that I use. So newsletter, Facebook group, YouTube. And those to me, like collectively, have been working well because I feel like I'm gaining building an actual relationship with some of my readers, like some of them specifically who like to comment on my things in my group, or some who like sign up to be an ARC reader. Like I feel like it's more personal rather than just like being another number who liked your Instagram photo. So I have found that to be a good thing. And I think also because as well, like books aren't really like other businesses. Like it's more the world of books isn't like selling, I don't know, online, what's something that people sell, like mobile phones or electronics. Like books are very personal. It's very emotive. So you want to find something where you can have a more personal connection with people. So again, YouTube, newsletter, those are kind of things. Whether it's if you're like selling products and you can blast about them on Twitter and Instagram, and it's all very like machine-ish, but it's not really the same for books. I think books are much more like emotive, and you know, it's more human based. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. There seems like an infinite number of resources and tips out there. How do you funnel it down to be useful for you?
Yes, it's so true. There's so much information, and that's also partly why I stopped using Instagram and Twitter, why I decided to just mainly focus on my YouTube channel and on my I think it's really difficult. I think for me the best thing, try and pick one thing and just stick with it. So for example, use that as examples again. I had to go with MailChimp, and then I found there were so many things I didn't like about MailChimp. I just got fed up with it. So I was researching different email providers and watching YouTube videos about them. And it was like, oh my God, there's like Flowdesk, MailerLite, ConvertKit, some Octopus one. Like, there's so many of them, and it's so hard to know. So I really do think if you find one that works for you, then just do that. You know, it's like we are living in an age where there is so much of everything out there, and if you're prone to anxiety, it's a nightmare. Like, even if you're not prone to anxiety, it's a nightmare, because we are living, there's just too much of everything all the time. And, you know, I really do think that finding one thing and just honing on that. So if you're going to focus on YouTube, do YouTube. If you're going to focus on building a killer Instagram profile, then do that. If you're, you know, but I think that, yeah, finding one thing and sticking with it, definitely. And also trying not to get too sucked into too much going on. Like, I don't know, I think it's best to just try and narrow it down as much as you can, really. Like, finding a few things that help. I mean, for example, like BookFunnel, I know is a really good site, but I don't use BookFunnel because I'm already using Story Origin, and I know they're very similar, so I don't really see the use in using both. I think pick one and just use that one and use it well. It's funny, it's almost a bit like dating apps now, I think, kind of thing. Like, if you're, say, using dating apps, if you're like actively dating, rather than having like 5 different apps, just use one and then see how it goes. And if you happen to meet like few people that you actually like, don't start thinking, oh my god, there's all these other potential prospects. Like, just stick with it, you know. Like, it's, yeah, I mean, you guys are all married, aren't you? I'm not really in that stage of life yet, as gathered I am a bit younger. But, you know, like, I mean, imagine if you were thinking about your spouse, like, oh my god, is this even the right person for me? Should I have married somebody else? Oh, you know, like, I know it's a funny comparison, but that's kind of what it is, really. You kind of can't spend time thinking about the other things. It's kind of about, yeah, so when something is working for you, if it's working and it's well, rather than thinking about what you could be using instead, focus on that and then just work on that. It's the same as with dating, the same as with anything, really. It's sometimes less is more. Sometimes having multiple options is actually too much.
Yes, I 100% agree with that because I am guilty of like having my attention on everything that everyone is saying. You should try this. This is good. You should try this. And yeah, it's really difficult to know and pin it down to just focus on what you're good at. Focus on what works for you. So if you could only pass on just one tip to aspiring self-published writers, what would you pass on?
About marketing specifically, or about everything?
Yes,
about marketing specifically. Get a newsletter. 100% get a newsletter. Build a newsletter as soon as you can. That is really going to help you. If that's one thing that you can focus on, I would say newsletters are really good. I think, honestly, anyone who is making, even if you're a musician, owning a business, I think everyone should have a newsletter, because the thing is, email, like, we think, oh no, people use emails. Like, everyone has an email. You have to have an email to freaking like have anything. You know, you need an email. Like, people, email is still the oldest form of online contact thingy, whatever. Like, everyone is using their emails. And if somebody, at the end of the day, right, if somebody is signing up to something, it's because they want to hear about you. They want to hear from you, even. Like, I don't like to follow too many newsletters, but I do follow Authors XP because she does weekly author emails, and she offers like services. Sometimes she has discounts, and I do follow that, and I do find it helpful. Like, we've all probably followed like email. I mean, I really personally hate email marketing, but if you actually want to hear from somebody, you will follow their email marketing. So yes, newsletter, 100%.
And I think that's really good. I've been doing some experimentation with marketing and what works and what doesn't work. And I have one more experiment to run. But so far, and what I mean is, like, for the past 3 months, I've done promotions. And the first month I did a book promotion company and told my newsletter. And I had so many X number of downloads and sales. Second month, I did another book promotion, but did not tell my newsletter. This month, which we're in April filming this and taping this month, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't do a book promotion site. I just put my books on sale to see what happened. And next month, I'm going to put my books on sale and only tell my newsletter and see what the difference is in all those numbers. So I've been trying different things. I'm experimenting to see what works. But so far, the experiment where I told my newsletter plus did the book promotion company had the most downloads and sales. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So trying different things. I'm trying to see what works. And, things change all the time. So I may come up with something that's like, hey, this worked. And then, 6 months from now, it's not going to work anymore.
But the fact that things change all the time is why newsletters are so great, because a newsletter is consistent. Like, you don't know what I saw something randomly on a Facebook group about Twitter. Like, is Twitter closing or something? I don't know what that is. It actually like shutting down? I don't know.
Elon Musk bought it.
Elon Musk. Yeah. It was
just bought by Elon Musk. But so a newsletter, that's something everything which is not going to go. A newsletter and a website specifically, like YouTube can shut down, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, they can all go, but a newsletter won't go because it's yours and you own it. Same as your website. Like if you've purchased it, I pay like, I think £13 per month for both my newsletters because once you get over 1,000 subs, you have to start paying, which is fine. Yeah, like that is really why I think it's so important to have a newsletter.
So we're going to transition from marketing to your writing life. How much time do you spend working as an author versus the other writing related stuff like editing, finding your readers or reviewers, which by the way, I'm an ARC reader for your next book.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
looking forward to that. Yeah. And marketing your books, of course.
Have you started it, by the way?
I have not, because my next book is due to my editor on Sunday. So I'm reading it back through one more time and then I'm starting your book on Monday.
Awesome. So for my Diana Vale book specifically, I would say it's about 50-50. So writing is a pleasure. Writing is, it's why we all write. That is the easiest part, if you like. So then if I say I spend about 50% of the time doing the actual writing, the stories, the other 50% is spent contacting my cover designer, going back and forth about the cover. Sometimes it's a massive pain. Sometimes she's really irritating and I'll say to her, can you make this change? And then she just hasn't done it or she's done it wrong. And I have to literally be very, very specific and say, yes, I need it to be this size and this shade of blue. And can you please crop out his wristwatch? Like, I swear to God, right? This book, in the model had a wristwatch and I had to ask her like I specifically said, wristwatch cropped out. I had to repeat this like 3 times, but that's really annoying. And then with the editing, I have the proofreaders on Fiverr who I've worked with. So these 2 lovely women, because I started with just this. So I actually was contacting different ones and I specifically wanted to find someone British because they're British books and they use British slang and British terminology. I've had an American lady who was amazing at it around Midnight and Anne, but I just couldn't be bothered with the hassle. I was like, just find a British person. So the lady who proofread about a good half of my Diana Vale books been amazing. And there was another lady as well, because obviously there's so many, having 2 editors was helpful. But the first lady, she's actually just currently unavailable. So the second lady has been doing them the last while. And they're both great. And they both genuinely love romance and they genuinely love my books, which is really is like, if no one else likes them, at least they like them. And they'd always be like, oh, I'm so looking forward to receiving it. And it's so, and they always, because I've been writing a lot as well, the more I've been doing them, the better my writing has been getting. And so because they're short books, they're quite simple. And when I say simple, I don't mean like rubbish. I mean simple in the sense that they're not big complex plots. It's usually like, you have 2 main characters, it's very focused on the same setting. There's usually similar events, they're very straightforward and the writing style is very clean. So I write them out all on Scrivener. I paste them in a Word document and I make them into a different font. I read through that and then I format them all with the page breaks for the chapters and all that. Then I send it to the editor and then, so it's just really, really simple. And because, not to like sound really big-headed, but because I am actually like quite good at writing already, I have obviously had a lot of practice. So, and I also used to blog. Well, I still have a blog. I just haven't blogged in a while, but blogging as well is something where I spent a lot of time. But because the thing is, if you're a writer, if you're writing a lot, and also if you're reading a lot, it kind of keeps you sharp. So it really helps to kind of sharpen you up. My dad is currently reading one of my Diana Vale books. I find it hilarious, the idea of my dad reading romance, but he's very prolific in terms of his like reading material. And so he was telling me he was reading it and he was saying, like, Zarina, this is really, really well written. Like, if this is how you're writing now, you're going to have a great career. And it was like, it really means a lot to hearing that from my dad because he's like incredible. So that was great. But in terms of other things, so the other things with Diana Vale is things like obviously doing the newsletter. If I update my bio, I got to update my bio for everything. The one thing I don't like, the one thing I really cannot stand about my Diana Vale, every single time I publish a new Diana Vale ebook, I got to go and update all of the links to the other books in these series. When I first started out, I had like 2 or 3, including the box sets. I think I have about 17. So I have to update all of these links, and it's such a bloody pain in the arse. Because the most recent Diana Vale book I published was I Dream of Cassie, which is a companion novella to Professor Valentine. Professor Valentine is from the girl's perspective, and this one's from the professor's perspective. So yeah, the following day when I was publishing it, I was updating all of the ebooks, and I literally just started crying, and I was literally just just feeling so horrible. I think I posted a YouTube video like the day after that, just saying about how I just felt really rubbish because I was so exhausted. But to kind of just wrap it all up, I would say it's about 50% writing, 50% sending to proofreader, cover design, updating the ebooks, formatting the paperbacks, doing the newsletters, and sometimes doing the Amazon ads.
Well, I want to focus on that 50% of the writing lifestyle. Do you have a set word count when you go in writing by day, by week? How do you set about publishing your fast publishing schedule for those 12 books in last year?
So I would say I do like to do it by word count because I usually have a target word count of around 30 to 35k per book, although for my MM books, they've been up to about 40k. So I try and do between 3 to 5k per day. On a really great day, I can do like 6k. But average 4k. 4k for me is nice. Like 4k, 4 to 5k in one day is good. Because also, I mean, if I write approximately, I think I write about 1.5k words per hour. So within the space of 3 hours, yeah, that's about 4.5k. So give or take a few. So yeah, I'd say roughly I don't spend much more than say 3 to 4 hours per day writing.
So when you're writing a new story, what comes first for you? The characters, the setting, or the plot?
Always the characters. All of my stories are fundamentally character driven. In fact, the only one which wasn't, in fact, you know, well, tic-tac-toe, I started with the concept, but it has become more character driven. Like for me, the character is at the heart of every story. I like stories and movies and shows that are character driven. Like that is really my thing. Because at the end of the day, right, for me, there's a lot of psychology that comes into writing a story, and it's really about tapping into the psychology of a person. Because at the end of the day, right, that's what it's all about. Just life is about getting along with people and trying to figure out relationships with other people. And that's what I think a good story should do.
Well, thanks for that insight. To support your writing career, you publish regular content on your YouTube channel for the AuthorTube community. Can you tell us about what you publish and your goals for your channel?
Yes, so I started my channel last year in 2021 in April, and that was about wanting to document. So initially it was about wanting to showcase my work, and as time has gone on, the channel's really developed. So I'm really proud of that channel. I do love it. I mean, unfortunately, I have had to take a bit of a step back from it because of focusing on my other writing and stuff. But in the summer, I'm planning on really, like probably around July time, really getting back into it. I really want to focus on, I don't know, I want to do like more like humor-based videos as well, because that was something I really enjoyed, embedding comedy. And I like also sometimes I do unedited videos on my author channel. Like I do just a quick video of myself talking about something, although I usually have to record that like 4 times. Doing that channel has been a blessing. I love YouTube. I love everything about it. I love being able to interact with people, and I find it helps me as well because it makes me feel less alone. Like I don't feel like I'm just stuck in my room doing this. I feel like I'm actually documenting my process with others. Like really, the channel is really about sharing my journey as an author. That's what it's really about.
What inspired you to write in so many different genres, and what have you liked writing the most?
I don't know. I didn't really plan it because it's funny because I don't actually think I write in that many genres. I think my books so far all come under the umbrella of contemporary fiction, but the main thing with my Zarina Macha books, I never really thought that much about genre. It was more like social realist kind of books about young women figuring out their place in the world. Then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, doing the romance genre was initially more of a business thing to make money, and then it developed into something which I've also come to love very much. So yeah, I really don't know, you know, but I think really I just love to write, and I don't think so much about the genre until afterwards, I guess.
So your poetry collection, Single Broke Female, mentions you're a musician. So what type of musician are you? And besides making it into your poetry, has it helped inspire you in your writing in any other ways?
Yes, so I actually went to music school at university. I studied songwriting and creative artistry, and I play guitar and sing and write songs. I also play drums as well, and I really missed it. I used to gig. I used to have a band. I stopped, 1, because of my panic attacks, and 2, because of wanting to just focus on my writing.
So what has been your favorite work to write so far, and why?
That's a good question. I don't know. I like all of them, honestly. I love all of them. In terms of my Diana Vale books, I've enjoyed doing the MM books the most, I would say.
In that case, do you have a least favorite one?
No.
In terms of writing?
No, not at all. I love them all.
All right. So, what are you working on next? And can you tell us a little bit about your book and when it'll come out?
Absolutely. So my current work in progress is a novel called Tic Tac Toe. I've been working on that since 2018, and that is a satire on extreme political correctness, social justice, wokeness, identity politics. It's basically about a dystopian society governed by an extreme politically correct government. And so I won the Page Turner Awards, and so my prize was that the next book I wanted to publish, they would pay for the editing. So that's actually currently with the developmental editor now, alongside having the beta readers. I didn't realize that developmental edit is supposed to come before beta readers, although somebody said that they can be. It does. I don't think it really matters anyway, because the editor said that he's happy to edit alongside what the betas say. I think it is, in my opinion, it's probably about 80% of the way done, or maybe 70% of the way close to the finished story. In my opinion, I think that it is in a pretty good stage, but I'm hoping to release that late October.
Well, you have answered all of our questions. Before we wrap up, can you please tell listeners where they can find you and purchase your books or sign up for your newsletter?
Yes, so if you literally go to my website, www.zarinamacha.co.uk, that's got all of my information there. It's got my newsletter sign up there. It has, under other work, a link to Diana Vale. But to find my Diana Vale books, you can simply type in author.to/Diana Vale, and that will bring you to the Diana Vale Amazon page in whatever your home country is. But all of my information is really on my website. I mean, that's really like the centralized hub of everything involved.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today, Zarina, and giving us your insight and experience. I really appreciated your passion for both writing, music, everything. It's really exciting to see somebody so with such just a different mindset and so kind of spread out there in terms of everything that you like. And thank you so much to our listeners as well and viewers. On June 15th, we'll have Peter Okonkwo, an independent published author of 3 poetry collections who writes about the range of emotions, religious undercurrents, the afterlife, and the mysteries of human fate. Goodbye, everyone.